Please welcome Hannah Grace.
In the car, speeding down 11, second guessing what would come. I held my tongue, eyes burned from the sun, learned my lesson, it all went wrong. I drive and I drive till I reach borderlines of a town where people talk, and radio stations compete for the nation, but viewership is lost. But I don't mind, I've been running for some time. Skip your call at an art exhibition in a field. I saw the end. Open mouths screaming somehow, then devour. A world caved in, but on the horizon a midnight's arising. I try to hold the flame, but life wasn't made to be changed every day. But I cannot stay the same, so I don't mind. Well, I've been ready for some time, and though I've tried, well, I've been running for some time. Strangers again, I've been running for some time. Strangers again, I've been running for some time. I've been running for some time. Thank you.
It sounds a lot better on the music. I mean, not
Wow,
not that it sounds bad.
I get it.
But the
No,
the
yeah,
volume
yeah.
sounds.
Do you want to do that again? Do you want another take?
Do you mind though? All right. Yeah. Whenever you're ready.
Sure. Yeah, I'll just jump into this intro.
Don't mess it up.
I'll do my best. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. My name's Joe Drinkwalter. I'm a local actor and musician and your host for the Arts People podcast. This is a podcast. That's it. Thank you for joining us for the second part in what will be a 5-part series highlighting important and interesting arts, people, and organizations in and around North Bay, Ontario, Canada. Big thanks to Back in the Bay, Small Town Times, and Dave Dale, and the wonderful people at Clark Communications for providing this awesome space and making this show possible. Before we get started, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about continuity errors. Our guest today is an incredibly talented, lifelong, multi-disciplinary artist. She started her arts journey in dance, where she found great success in competition, winning countless awards for her performance and contributions and dedication to the craft. She's also a longtime member of our theater community with involvement in Dreamcoat, Mustard Seed, On the Inch Fringe Festival, Summer Challenge, where she has won lots of awards for her performance and contributions and dedication to that craft. She sits here now, an incredibly talented musical artist in her final year at Canadore College's recording and production program, music recording and production program, sound recording and production program, after which she plans to begin a career in sound and music where she will no doubt continue to win awards for her performances and contributions and dedication to that craft. Please welcome Hannah Grace. Thanks for the performance. That was awesome. How long have you been writing music for?
That's a funny story. Difficult to say, really. So I used to write really stupid songs when I was like 8 or 9 years old.
Hell yeah.
And they were like, I was 8 or 9, so they were not good because I didn't know like song structure or anything like that. And for the longest time, I thought that I couldn't write a song because I was comparing it to the work that I wrote when I was like 8. And so I went through like all of my teen years not writing anything for that reason, and then eventually was kind of like pushed by a number of people to try to write, and so I started like actually seriously writing music when I was 18.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you think 8-year-old Hannah would like the song that you just played, or would she be like,
I hope so, but 8-year-old Hannah was into like One Direction and Avril Lavigne and stuff like that, so I'm not sure.
So maybe not.
Yeah, maybe not, but you never know. Yeah.
Oh, and we never will.
Yeah.
Anyway, welcome to the show, by the way.
Thank you.
I did my best with that introduction, but did I miss anything? Is there anything the people should know about you?
I don't think so. I think you covered all the bases very well, yeah.
Awesome. Let's just jump right into it. Do you? So you kind of wrote some songs at 8 years old, and I know you danced for a good portion of your childhood. Do you remember a life before arts?
No. Yeah, I even when I wasn't involved in dance or theater or anything, which would have been like from the time I was 0 to 3, that like I started dance when I was 4. So I still was very artistic. I remember there's a home video of me on like a VHS where I'm under 1, and we had this like dancing Santa Claus that had like the saxophone that would play like Christmas music. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about.
Not at all.
Okay, it was like this. Yeah, it was like this little toy, and you would press a button, and the Santa Claus would play Christmas music through his saxophone. And I loved it as a kid, and I would press it, and I would just like dance like I was crawling, and I'd like rock back and forth and stuff. So there's that. But then also like when I was a kid too, I would put on like my favorite movie. So one of my favorites at the time was Labyrinth, and I would get in full costume as my favorite character, and I would act out all the scenes as I was watching the movie. So like I said, even before I was actually involved in like the dance company or anything, it was always
your parents saw that and said, we should put her in musical theater.
Probably.
We should
probably
dance.
Yeah.
Nice. Tell us about a little bit about kind of from those early days of dance, like whenever your mom or dad enrolled you in that, to now. Like how do I put this? What did your arts journey look like?
So I started in dance when I was 4, and then that turned into doing competitive dance when I was I think 8. And around that time when I joined competitive, I also started doing musical theater stuff, and I would do Dreamcoat's summer shows, and I would also do Mustard Seed, which is at Trinity United Church in North Bay. And so, yeah, I just kind of progressed dance to theater. And then when I was 11, I taught myself to play the guitar. I was on a trip with my family. We used to drive out west every single year to go see my grandparents. And they lived in a really small town of like maybe 50 people at most. And so there weren't any kids that were around my age and not much to do. And so I just ended up picking the guitar one time, and my dad kind of taught me some chords because he plays guitar. He's in a band in North Bay called Tall Pork. My sister also played ukulele, so she helped me find ultimate guitar. And that's how I learned to play the guitar, was just looking at like the chord charts on there. And yeah, so that just kind of progressed on. I started doing theater in high school, and I did more serious stuff then. Also did musical theater, but I did dramatic theater and participated in NTS and then Fringe. Ended up retiring from dance when I was 17. And then just kind of shifting focus to theater, and then stopping doing theater at a certain point and just putting all my eggs in one basket of music.
Are there any organizations or people that you'd like to shout out that kind of helped you get to where you are?
Yeah, absolutely. I have 3 female teachers that have been incredibly important in my arts career. That's Darlene LaFerrier, Jocelyn Bell Summersby, and Renee Scher. And Darlene is somebody who's directed me multiple times with Mustard Seed, and she's known me like pretty much my entire life. Jocelyn was my dance teacher in high school, and she's also directed me in a number of things as well. And then Renee was the owner of the dance studio that I competed with for years. And each of them have been incredibly supportive throughout my entire life. They've offered me really important opportunities and made sure that my voice was heard. And they've also been extremely patient with me. I am very open about dealing with mental health issues, and each one of them have been so understanding about that and have worked to support me and make me comfortable in my life, which is great. And I love those people so much. I will always be very thankful for each of them. And then I also always have to shout out my mom and my dad and my sister, because, you know, my parents sacrificed so much for my sister and I to be able to have the opportunities that we did and enroll in the programs that we did. And they've been supportive no matter what. They go out to all my shows. And so I'm super, super happy to have them in my life. Very, very lucky.
So I was kind of about, you answered this question in part, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How do you feel that these arts opportunities, so Dreamcoat, Mustard Seed, Renee's, and anything else you might think of, how do you think these have benefited you kind of beyond the artistic side of your life, like as a person?
Yeah. I think that arts allows so much self-expression, and that has made me be able to understand the world around me, but also me as an individual too. I'm a creator. I love creating different artistic things. So, I was a choreographer for a long time, and then I directed for Fringe, and then now I'm writing my own music. And through creating, it's allowed me the opportunity to explore my own emotions and explore how I view things and really come to terms with who I am and my mental health and everything, and grow as a person, really. So I think that self-expression has been incredibly important to making me the person that I am.
Do you think that arts as a mode of self-expression and kind of almost self-actualization, do you think that's maybe missed out for those that kind of write off the arts, that maybe don't pursue it, or do you feel that maybe other people find that in a different aspect of their life?
I think That's a very interesting and very difficult to answer question, especially because it's coming from from my point of view as an artist, right? I think that there's other ways that you can find self-expression, but I do think that the arts just offers that a little bit more than some other programs or streams might.
Yeah, and it's such a subjective thing. Again, as you know,
not to knock the other subjects, not to knock other people. I just love the arts.
Tell me a little bit about the Canadore program that you're going to finish up this year, I guess.
Yeah, so I'm in the recording engineering program at Canadore. It's a 2-year program. Like you said, I'm going into my second year, so I'll be finishing up this year. And it basically trains people to be able to work in various parts of the industry. So we get trained in mostly like mixing and producing and engineering and mastering and live sound. But then you also gain perspectives from other aspects of the industry too. I've been able to talk with a lot of musicians and learn how to market yourself as a musician or how to go into negotiations or anything like that, and kind of, you know, learn a little bit more about the music business side of things has been interesting too. So it's great. I highly recommend it if you're looking to get into music because it just offers a really holistic view of things.
Yeah, kind of a broad view. So if you want to be a performer or if you would rather sit behind a soundboard and do your thing there, that's cool.
Exactly.
And before starting Canadore, you went and got your undergrad at Trent University. What did you study there?
Cultural studies. That's what I got my degree in. It was a very interesting journey. I started in English and Indigenous studies, but I realized pretty quickly that English wasn't the program for me. It only dealt in literature, which I'm very interested in, but cultural studies dealt in various artistic forms, so like literature, but then also like music and theater and film and dance and stuff like that. So it suited me as an individual more. So I ended up switching my major to cultural studies and then eventually just focused on cultural studies so that I could get a 3-year degree rather than a 4-year degree, because at that point I realized that the recording engineering program was a thing and I really wanted to start that, but I also wanted to get my degree and finish that up. So yeah.
And I'll get into a little bit more about that switch in a bit. But as long as I've known you, you've always been a straight A student, you know, Dean's List at Trent and really academically focused, as well as, of course, your artistic side. Do you feel that your artistic side has benefited you academically?
Absolutely. I think one of the best examples that I can give is it's given me so much confidence being in the arts. There were, specifically in high school, we would do like class presentations and I hated them. I did not enjoy doing class presentations, but I was able to get through it because of my theater background, and I was decent at live speaking because of that. So it's just, I think it's made me, you know, a decent speaker, which is good for high school and good for academics and all of that, you know. And it's also it's also made me very driven. I think that the arts, I'm very driven to succeed in the arts, and I always have been. And so that kind of transferred over to school, and no matter what the subject was, I always wanted to succeed and do well in each of the subjects. Yeah.
A career in the arts, correct me if I'm wrong, has always been kind of a dream for you.
Yes.
Right. That's the question. No,
great question.
And here you are, ready to start a career in the music industry. Was there ever a time when that career didn't feel attainable?
Yes. I think that would have been in my last year of high school in grade 12, when I was really deciding what I was going to do post-secondary, what I was going to go in for university. I think there were a lot of people who, when I decided to go in the program that I did, they were surprised that I didn't go into an arts program. I got a lot of people asking about why I didn't go into theater in particular, because that's what I was really focused on at the time. But in terms of theater, I think it was a major hobby of mine. I loved it, but it wasn't ever something that I thought of as doing as a career. Yeah, in terms of music was always something that I wanted to pursue. It was something that it was always in the back of my mind and I would always think about, but I didn't think it was attainable. And so I just didn't go into a program because I wasn't classically trained too. So I thought you needed to have that sort of a training. Or I also thought, that working as a musician, which is really like the only thing that I thought about when I wanted to go into music before I got into this program or anything, it can be difficult. And being able to have that as your sole career is a relatively rare thing. And so I also had those doubts of, what makes me the one person that is good enough and that people actually want to listen to be able to make it my only career and make it my sole income thing,
And what changed?
I think opening my perspective, broadening my scope of what was in the music industry. I realized that, I can do music, which is what I'm trying to do, but there's also other, ways that I can work in the industry too. I can work as a mixer or a producer or an engineer or anything like that. But I can also work as live sound. I can work for movies or video games or anything like that. So it's opening that up has made it seem much more attainable to work in the industry.
You like video games? What are some of your favorites?
BioShock is my favorite. It's always been my favorite my entire life. I also like Far Cry. I'm replaying the Far Cries right now. Not all the Far Cries.
One's your favorite? I know there's a few.
Far Cry 4 is Far Cry 5. Sorry, Far Cry 5 is my favorite. That's the one that I'm playing right now.
Do you feel that technology, this is a bit of a pivot, do you feel that technology has made careers or even hobbies in music specifically more attainable?
I think that it's definitely made hobbies more attainable because really anybody has access to a good DAW. There's some decent free ones out there that you can get. I know a lot of people work with GarageBand, but then there's also Audacity, which is all right too. But you can also pay some money and be able to get Pro Tools or Studio One or anything. And so it makes it easier for people to have home studios and make their own music or produce for other people or anything. So that hobby is definitely much more attainable. But I would hesitate to say a career is more attainable coming from a musician standpoint in particular, because I think that when that hobby becomes more attainable, there's more people that want to put it out there and want to succeed in that field. So the pond, yeah, exactly. And there's so many people on TikTok, for instance, that are posting singing videos and trying to go viral, and so it's still difficult. I would hesitate to say that a career is more attainable in terms of a musician standpoint, but hobby for sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
And from a musician standpoint, do you feel that these tools with technology, so you mentioned TikTok, but even, home studios, do you think that I guess specifically social media, do you think that that's kind of necessary for marketing, kind of for a musician, for an artist nowadays?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's very, very important. I think that's where a lot of your audience is focusing their attention on. I know I've found a lot of musicians that I listen to on TikTok. So I think in particular, TikTok is a really important space right now. And I think I've heard musicians who are actually signed to a label to say that it's in their contracts sometimes now that they need to try to go viral on TikTok for their song to come out and everything. It's a really important marketing strategy right now. Yeah.
Speaking of musicians, what are some of your inspirations for music, or even just music that you like?
There's a lot. I would say Phoebe Bridgers is a huge one for me in terms of lyrics, but also in terms of sonically too. The way that she produces her songs it's so interesting to me, and it is very similar to how I want my music to sound. So she's a big influence, and Boy Genius as well, like the band of Phoebe, Lucy Dacus, and Julian Baker. But I would also say Taylor Swift. I've been a huge fan of Taylor Swift for a very long time. And then, Adrian Lanker of Big Thief is a super important writer for me. And then Bob Dylan and Joni Mitchell for sure too. Especially Bob Dylan right now. His song structure has been really inspiring me lately. So he doesn't necessarily write a bunch of choruses a lot of the time. He'll do like a verse and then like a little bit of a refrain and just kind of go back and forth. It's a pretty typical folk song structure. But I listened a lot to Blood on the Tracks in the last year or so. And so it's just kind of been the way that he writes his songs has been kind of ingrained in my head, and I can't escape it right now.
Nice. For your like process for writing music, for writing songs, I mean, one, feel free to talk about it a little bit if you like, and two, does it change through time, do you feel?
Yeah. I like to write all my songs pretty much in one go. So I'll sit down typically at nighttime and write until I'm finished the song, because I like to be in that specific headspace. And that's been that way, since I was 18 when I first started writing. But yeah, it's somewhat stayed the same. I used to write like poetry when I was younger, and so in the early stages of my writing I would kind of draw from the poems that I had written and make it into a song rather than a poem, because I think that when I was a teenager I thought I was writing poetry, but now I realize that I was writing song lyrics. And nowadays I don't really write poetry, but I sometimes will think up like a lyric in my head when I'm just doing random things. I always have a note in my phone that I can go in and I can write down exactly what I thought, so that later I can return to it and write it into a song. Or I always have a notebook in my bag so that I can do the same too.
What would you say to someone who was in the same position that you were in toward the end of high school, graduating, kind of deciding where you want to go post-secondary? I mean, do you feel like if you were able to talk to your 18-year-old self, would you have taken a different path? And what would you say to somebody that's maybe considering a career in the arts, but also is thinking that it's unattainable and might choose something else?
Yeah. I don't know if I would have taken a different path, to be honest. I was pretty set on going to university and getting a degree. I've always loved academics. I loved school. And so that just kind of seemed like the natural route for me. I would tell myself, though, however, for like universities, people who are going into university and not necessarily an arts program or a specific program, and you don't know completely what you want to do with your life yet, I would recommend going into a general degree rather than a focused degree like I did, because I changed my mind about what I wanted to do so many times. And I think it would have been very beneficial for me if I just went into the first year of my university as a general student, because I would have been able to take a lot of different programs. But that's for just people who aren't going into the arts or anything. If you're thinking about going into the arts, I think it's really important that you have a very strong passion for it, because there is so much rejection in the arts field. And if you're not passionate about it, I think that will affect you and make you want to give up a little bit easier. So that passion is really important to push you forward and to continue a career. And I think if you're a musician or an artist and you're at a point where you kind of are feeling like you should give up or anything, I think it's important to remember what made you love that art form to begin with and try to revisit that a bit, because I think that when you go into the industry and whatever artistic industry you're in, it turns into a job at some point, obviously, and you lose that why it was so important to you in the first place. So that would be my recommendation, is to try to remember what drew you to that form, that artistic form to begin with.
Nice. It reminds me of a quote like, stuff like inspiration and motivation and, that feeling where you're like, yeah, I'm going to accomplish all these things today. Like that fades pretty quickly. But like the self-discipline and the kind of grounding yourself in the roots of why you want to do this thing. Like
Exactly.
That's the thing that keeps you going, I think.
Yeah.
In the song 11, you have a lyric that goes... speeding down 11, where you admit to committing a crime. Are you worried about jail time? How fast were you going down Highway 11?
I don't actually speed. I don't. Okay, not for the most part, I don't.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got it. Tell me about your process in writing 11, where... I mean, you don't have to get like super personal if you don't want to, but tell me about what that process looked like, maybe sitting down, writing that.
Yeah, so I wrote 11. I was going for a drive with my good friend Nick Babin. And
I'm aware of him. I know him.
Yeah. And I had just dropped him off at his house, but I didn't want to. I wanted to keep going for a drive. So I wasn't driving on 11, actually. I was driving on a different highway that I have no idea what the number of the highway was. I'm sorry, but it's too long. It was too long to put in the song.
I'm sorry.
I guess so.
Speeding
Maybe.
down Highway 33B.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
No, exactly.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, so I was on the highway that's going out to Nipissing Village. And it was like right before sunset, so there was this really nice kind of golden glow off of everything, and I just started writing lyrics in my head, writing a song, and one of the first lyrics was in the car speeding down 11, second guessing, and I was just kind of like, okay, I need to go home right now and write the song, because I was writing so many lyrics in my head, but I couldn't write it down because I was driving. And so I turned around and got home and wrote it. And like I said, I write my songs pretty much in one sitting, and this one was no different. But I wrote it in probably like an hour and a half. It was pretty fast, as you know, because my songs usually are not that fast when I write them. And I was, super proud of it. And so it was the first song that I performed live for people. That was an original song of mine. It was one of the first songs that I like really showed people. It was the first song I recorded too. So yeah, that's why I decided to perform it here, because
Now, I've had the pleasure of hearing at least a demo of it. And that was a few months ago. That was a while ago. Is there a potential release date or a thought in your head of when you might let people hear it?
So I hesitate to give a time frame of release because I don't want to hold myself to that date. I have a very specific view in my head of how I want my songs to be released, and I want to be able to, like when I release 11 eventually, I want to have other songs in my back pocket that are also ready to be released, so that it's not like I put out 11 and then I have
3 years
months
later
or years in between the other releases, you know what I mean? Like I want to do a proper rollout of whatever it leads up to, whether it's an EP or an album or whatever. So I hesitate to give a release, but hopefully soon. I'm working on stuff. I'll tease that. So hopefully soon.
Big things are coming.
Yes.
what inspires you creatively? What you said you were driving and the song just came into your head, or yeah.
Yeah, I think driving a lot does inspire me. I have to stop myself from every single one of my songs having a reference to driving at some point, because I just do so much of it, because that's what I like to do in my spare time in North Bay, yeah, driving definitely inspires a lot, but I think listening to music does too, to a certain extent. Reading, that's a big thing for me as well. I'm a very, very big reader. I read like 100 books last year or something like that.
Give us your top 5.
Of last year?
Yeah.
Okay, Beartown was a great series, so I read all 3 of those books last year, and I loved it. And
is that 3 of your top 5, or does that count as 1?
I'll say that's 1, but then I also, last year I read Wuthering Heights for the first time, and that was incredible. And I was thinking to myself, why had I not read it before now? So that's definitely in my top 5. I love Frankenstein. I read Frankenstein when I was in high school and then have reread it multiple times after that. That's probably my favorite book of all time. I will always, always love that book. Lord of the Rings. I read that a couple years ago.
That is quite a few books, though.
That's 3.
Yeah.
3, but they're pretty hefty. No, it's 3. It's 3.
Bottom of my arm is literally just Lord of the Rings.
But it's Fellowship.
No, but it was.
Oh, okay.
It was done during the Great Depression. They couldn't
Oh,
produce it.
that's
So
interesting.
It's 3 novels. It's technically 6 books put into 3
Huh.
volumes.
Oh wow, Lord of the Rings. Yeah, that's 1 book.
Yeah, I read that a couple years ago, and I grew up with the movies, and then finally read the book, and loved it. Absolutely loved it. So that's my favorite, probably my favorite series book series. I love Lord of the Rings. Okay. And then, Bell Jar is probably one of my other favorites by Sylvia Plath. I wrote a song called The Fig Tree, which was very heavily influenced by a passage in the Bell Jar, which is like the fig tree passage. Reading is definitely a big thing in terms of inspiration for my music. I make a lot of allusions to different books or anything like that. Like I said, the fig tree is influenced by that passage, but then also I have another song called Hunger Song, which is influenced by one of Shakespeare's sonnets too. My favorite sonnet 94.
What does your music career look like over the next few years? Are you going to be playing some live gigs in town? Do you have any coming up soon? Obviously, you'll be releasing some music at an undisclosed date.
Yeah. Lots of recording and mixing and trying to get my music into a shape that I want to put it out there. Like I said, I'm a perfectionist, so it takes a while sometimes. So yeah, a lot of recording and then eventually putting it out there, hopefully soon, like I said. But I am I'm trying to build more of a live presence in North Bay. So I played at the Artisans Market in June. And potentially I might be doing more of that as well. And then also I will be performing at Fringe on August 12th, Saturday, August 12th on their Fringe patio. I don't have a time for you yet, but it will be out there eventually. And I will be posting about it on my Instagram, which is hannah.grace.321. I'm trying to... I don't like social media, but I am
like
trying
you said,
to.
It's kind of necessary. Like you kind of have to build somewhat of so people know where you're playing.
Yeah.
People know
So I'll be posting more on Instagram, but I do use my Instagram stories a lot for any live performances. You can also, if you're somebody who's looking for a singer-songwriter, indie folk musician, if you're a talent person looking to book someone to play, you can reach out to me on Instagram as well. I will get that DM, and I'd be very interested in potentially playing for you.
We can cut this if it's not a question that,
Sure.
that you want to answer.
Oh no, now I'm terrified.
But
Go ahead. Oh.
there's only one. I don't know what you mean. There's only one book. I can't even answer that question. You mentioned earlier that, you know, mental health has affected your life in big ways, as it does. Does that show up in your music? How does that affect your songwriting and even like live performances? Do you experience any kind of, you've been performing, you know, your entire life. Does one affect the other or make it better, worse?
Yeah. It definitely shows up in my music. I think at the heart of all the songs that I write, really it's very self-reflective. And so like even if my songs are about something else or somebody else or anything, it's really about me at the end of the day, and my thoughts on a situation. And so I just like how other musicians sometimes reject the notion of like their music being about somebody else, I kind of reject that too a little bit. But so yeah, it definitely shows up in my music. The Fig Tree in particular is definitely an exploration of my mental health, as is like Lullaby and 11 too, to be honest, for sure is talks about how I was feeling in the throes of, you know, my anxiety and dealing with a little bit of like a mental health dip. In terms of performing, it really affected it for a while. I was dealing with some moderately severe anxiety right at the end of high school, and I dealt with it for a while after that, but it was really difficult for me to perform around that time. And I remember I would, you know, like I performed at coffee houses at Trinity as well. And so I would sign up for them, but then sometimes I would decide not to do it at the last second. And I, like, my mom works at the church, and I remember I would like lock myself in her office basically so that I didn't have to confront it or anything. And so it really affected that for a while, and I didn't perform for a good chunk of time in terms of music, and it was difficult and theater wise for me to get up on stage too. And I know a lot of people, I would talk about it, and there would be people that would say to me like, oh, that's so surprising because you look, you know, comfortable up on stage. And but it really, really affected me. Before dance or before shows, like theater shows, before musicals or anything, I would have to sit down backstage and just not talk to anyone because it was affecting me a lot. And so, like I said, I didn't perform for a little bit in terms of music. And then, unfortunately, I decided I was going to get back into performing in 2019, I think. So then that affected that. And so now I'm getting back into it. And luckily, I'm in a much better mental place, and I'm able to perform in a way that's not, you know, going to affect my mental health in a negative way or anything like that, which is great. And I love it. And I've always loved performing, but it, like I said, it was just difficult sometimes. And so I'm happy that it's not as difficult.
Is there anything
anymore.
that helped you get to that place, to this place?
Writing. Honestly, it was writing music. Because like I said earlier, it's a very self-reflective process for me. And it allowed me to understand my mental health and my anxiety and everything. And so being able to work through that in an artistic form, I think just it was a method of expression, and it helped me get that out there. And work through it and understand it and find ways to deal with it, which is writing, So like writing has been very, very important in my life. Yeah.
So you're at Trent, you're doing your thing there. And then at a certain point, you decided that you wanted to explore music as potentially an education and maybe a career. What was that pivot like? What was that change of scene like?
It was interesting, and I think that I did it out of, like I said, I wasn't happy at, not that I wasn't happy at Trent. Trent is a great school, but I just wasn't happy in the programs that I was in just personally. It wasn't what I needed. And like I said, I always fell back on music. I always wanted to do something in music, but it just didn't seem attainable or anything. And so I ended up finding the recording engineering program and realizing, oh yeah, I really want to do this. And it was scary, but I think pivoting to a job in music came out of a place of, like, it's cliche. I think a lot of artists say this, but it's very true. It came out of a place of need. Like I need to be in this field. I need to be working in this industry because it's who I am. You know what I mean? And I can't picture myself working in anything else because it's me, So yeah.
And art, whatever type of art that you do, but especially I find music is a very personal medium. Is there any times when you're writing that you write something and you're like, I probably shouldn't tell the world that, or anything that I don't know. Yeah, I guess maybe more so the question is how do you navigate around it being such a personal medium and you wanting to put this out to the world, but then also maintaining your privacy and personal life and
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that I love Phoebe Bridgers, and she's a major influence of mine. And I think she does this, she has this way of writing where she is talking about very specific circumstances in her life sometimes, or experiences that she's had, but she does so in a way that's still broad and relatable to other people. So I think for myself, I write about things that I've gone through or situations that are maybe more personal sometimes, but I try to make it more, I try to express it in a way that's going to be a little bit more universal for people so that they can maybe apply it to something in their life. I'd never name names of people or anything and or get too in detail because I also don't think people need that from me. I think people a lot of the time they listen to music so that they can find themselves in it too, and putting too much of my experience in it kind of tramples over that.
There's kind of like a threshold you have to play around where it's like it needs to be personal enough that it's relatable because these experiences, these emotions, these feelings are universal. But then also, if it's too personal, then people are like, oh well, I don't know, this person and that person, and I didn't specifically drive down Highway 11 at this time and think about, you're right. There's kind of a line you have to walk. Mm-hmm. So Hannah, thanks for coming on the show.
Of course.
Appreciate it. Always great talking to you. Mm-hmm. And to you, thanks for tuning in. Have yourself a wonderful day. Have yourself a wonderful day. And that's all I got. That's it. We can cut now.
Okay.
And cut.